They say money changes people. That's not true. Money doesn't change you. It just reveals who you really are. When Leo won $15 million, his family thought it was a blessing. They were wrong. It was a death sentence, a debt that would have to be paid not in cash, but in blood and fear.
Your family are having a big New Year's this year, aren't they? The voice, thin and reedy, drifted over the fence, making Leo's brother Mark pause with the garden hose in his hand. He was over at Leo's, helping with the yard work. The voice belonged to the neighbor, a shadowy figure behind a screen door. Her words weren't wrong, not by a long shot. Just over a week ago, the news that Leo Bean had won the lottery sent a seismic shock through the small riverside town of Havenwood. $15 million. It was a number so vast, so utterly life-altering, that it felt like something from a movie, not something that happened to a guy like Leo. To say Leo had a tough life would be an understatement. He dropped out of school early, taking whatever work he could find to stay afloat. His parents left him a small plot of land when they passed, but he'd had to mortgage it to the hilt and borrow from everyone he knew just to build the tiny one-story house he, his wife Jenna, and their 3-year-old daughter Lily called home. His days were a blur of odd jobs. If someone's pipes burst or their fence blew down, Leo was the guy they called. Meanwhile, Jenna stayed home, trying to make a little extra cash by assembling intricate jewelry for an online Etsy store. It was meticulous, eye-straining work that paid pennies on the dollar. At the end of every year, they'd sit at that kitchen table, and after all the math was done, they'd be lucky to have a couple $100 left over. Just enough to buy Lily a new winter coat, and maybe, just maybe, tuck a little away for an emergency that was always just around the corner.
You'd never even played the lottery before. The whole thing was a fluke. A buddy at a job site showed him the app, and on a whim, Leo spent $2 on a single quick pick ticket. He didn't think about it again.
The next morning, an email notification told him he'd won the grand prize. He was convinced it was a scam, but then the official call came, telling him to come to the state capitol to claim his prize, with no request for a single cent up front. A tremor of disbelief, of impossible hope, began to shake him. And it was real. He'd actually won. The day he collected the money, he told Mark he nearly passed out from the shock. In an instant, poor Leo, the guy who struggled for every dollar, was gone. In his place was Leo the millionaire. But the biggest change wasn't in Leo. It was in Jenna. It was as if she physically shed the scent of poverty. She started dressing up, spending lavishly. Just last week, she spent $500 on her hair, a sum that, a year ago, would have been an unattainable fantasy. Leo didn't mind. He saw no problem with it. He finally had money. Why shouldn't he spoil his wife and child? What was the point of wealth if you still had to live like you were poor? Having finished with the garden hose, Mark watched his own truck pull into the driveway. He was a good brother. When Leo's daughter Lily was born and he was dead broke, Mark didn't just give him money. He had his wife, Sarah, come to the hospital to help Jenna. Leo felt he owed him more than he could ever repay. "Hey, got everything you need?" Mark called out, his voice a familiar, comforting rumble as he slammed the truck door. "It's New Year's Eve, man." "Got more than we need, Mark. Come on in," Leo said, a genuine smile spreading across his face.
"Good. That's good," Mark said, clapping his younger brother on the shoulder as he stepped inside. "I'm happy for you, Leo. Really. I bet Mom and Dad are resting easy, knowing you're set. Hey, if you guys need anything, you just say the word. Don't you hesitate, Leo told him, his voice thick with sincerity.
Mark let out a short laugh. Don't worry, I'm not about to start hitting you up. But it means a lot to know I could if I had to. He paused, his tone shifting, becoming more serious. Listen, enjoy it, but you two need to be careful. You have money now. You need to think about home security.
This time of year, Mark continued, his voice low, you get these bored kids, no cash, maybe a gambling problem. They get desperate, do something stupid. You don't want to regret not being prepared. I know, Leo nodded. I've been meaning to call someone after the holidays. Get this place fixed up right, build a higher fence, maybe install some security cameras.
Good. Don't put it off, Mark insisted. It's not about flashing your money. It's about being safe. Sarah and I don't have a pot to piss in, but we still put up a camera. Gives you peace of mind. You're right, I will, Leo promised. So, where's Jenna? She's not working today, is she?
Nah, she's over at a friend's shop, helping her with the end-of-year sale, Leo explained. The friend helped us out a lot back in the day, so Jenna's just returning the favor, not getting paid. When's she getting back? Probably late afternoon, Leo replied. She'll be back for the ball drop, for sure. Well then, Mark said, a grin returning to his face. In that case, how about we fire up the grill? I saw a couple of nice steaks in the fridge. You and me can have a proper celebration.
The brothers spent the afternoon grilling steaks and drinking beer. Leo cooked one rare for Jenna and set it aside, covering it with foil. The other he sliced up, feeding small, tender pieces to Lily. It was perfect. By late afternoon, full and content, Leo went into the bedroom to lie down with his daughter for a nap. Mark, needing to get home to help Sarah with their own New Year's Eve dinner, said his goodbyes.
As he was walking his motorcycle out of the gate, Mark saw Jenna returning. Instinctively, he was about to call out a greeting, but the words caught in his throat. She wasn't alone. She was standing by the side of the house, speaking in low, urgent tones to a man. Mark froze, an uneasy feeling prickling his skin. "I told you, just go!" he heard Jenna hiss, her voice sharp with panic. "Jenna?" Mark called out, his voice louder than he intended. He started walking towards them. He could see the man more clearly now. About his age, dressed like an office worker, slacks, a button-down shirt, loafers. Definitely not from around here. The man turned, saw Mark approaching, and without a word, spun on his heel and walked away briskly, disappearing around the corner of the street. Jenna turned to face him, forcing a bright, brittle smile. "Oh, Mark! Hey, what was that all about, Jenna?" Mark asked, his eyes scanning the empty street where the man had vanished. "Oh, nothing," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Just a guy asking for directions. He wanted me to write it down, but I didn't have any paper, that's all."
Mark stared at her for a long moment. The lie was plausible, but it didn't feel right. "I thought it might be one of those so-called old friends coming out of the woodwork looking for a handout. I told Leo, you two are in a different world now. You need to be wary of people like that." "I know," Jenna said, her voice a little too eager. "It's crazy. When we were poor, nobody cared. Now everyone in town knows our names, wants to say hi. It's a lot."
"And be careful with the local kids, too," Mark added, his gaze unwavering. "They get desperate." "Don't worry, Mark," she said, her smile tightening. "I've got it all under control." A beat of silence passed between them. "So, you came by earlier?"
"Yeah, I was here since this morning." Had a few drinks with your husband, he said, his voice flat. I should get going. Gotta get home for the countdown. Okay, drive safe, she said. Tell Sarah and the kids I said Happy New Year. Will do. Mark swung his leg over his motorcycle, turned the key in the ignition, and drove off. The uneasy conversation replaying in his mind. A sour note in an otherwise celebratory day.
Later that night, just before midnight, the small house was quiet, except for the television. The local news channel was broadcasting the celebration from the city. Leo sat on the couch, his arm wrapped around Jenna, his heart full. The feeling was so pure, so complete it was almost painful. Everything he'd ever worried about had been erased by a random sequence of numbers. "Should we wake Lily up?" he murmured, his lips close to Jenna's hair. "Let her see the new year come in with us?"
No, don't, Jenna whispered back, not taking her eyes off the screen. It took me forever to get her to sleep. If she wakes up now, she'll be up till dawn. All right then. He settled back, squeezing her hand. You know, he started, his voice soft and full of dreams. Now that we have this chance, we should do something real with it. I was thinking, you love cooking, you're great with people. I could open a little diner for you. Nothing fancy, just a real, honest-to-goodness place of our own.
Jenna stiffened, almost imperceptibly. You've thought about this already? She asked, a strange note in her voice. You didn't say anything?
"Just kicking ideas around," he said, with a soft chuckle. "It's not something you can just do overnight. Finding the right spot, getting permits, it could take months. I want us to have something that's ours, something we built."
I know, she said, finally turning to him. But you have no idea what people are saying about us. The whispers I hear at the market. Some people are happy for us, sure, but others, it's like they're putting a curse on us, saying money that falls from the sky will disappear just as fast. It makes me nervous, Leo.
Let them talk, he said, his voice firm and reassuring. Who cares what they say? The only thing I was ever afraid of was seeing you and Lily go hungry. I don't care if the whole world is cursing my name behind my back. Their karma is their own. He stood up as the countdown on the TV reached its final seconds. Come on. He walked over to the small table where they kept photos of their parents and lit a stick of incense. A small prayer for the past and a hopeful look towards the future. The first few weeks of the new year passed in a blur of blissful disbelief. It was, without a doubt, the happiest and most carefree time of Leo and Jenna's life. They no longer had to worry about money for groceries or bills. They were generous with New Year's gifts for everyone, from the elderly to the children in their neighborhood. Their status in the extended family skyrocketed. Uncles and aunts who had once looked down on them were now falling over themselves with saccharine compliments. Leo knew what would come next. Once the novelty wore off, the request to borrow money would start. He'd already decided he wouldn't give to everyone. He would only help those who had been there for him when he had nothing. It was the 8th of January, a cold afternoon. Mark drove his motorcycle over to his brother's place, hoping to drag him out for a beer. When he arrived, he found the metal gate locked. He called out, "Leo! Hey, Leo!" After a moment, Leo appeared, phone in hand. "Mark, hey, come on in." He unlocked the gate. "Sorry, I was on the phone with a realtor about leasing a spot for the diner. Didn't hear you pull up."
"You're really going through with it. Where are you looking?" Mark asked, impressed.
"Up in the county seat, near the main market. No point opening in our little village. There's not enough business here," Leo explained. He then grinned. "But that's for tomorrow. Tonight, We have business of our own." He went to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of whiskey so expensive it looked like a museum piece. $1,500 bottle of scotch. The guy at the store said it's the best. Let's see if he was lying.
The two brothers drank until nearly 10 o'clock. The nearly full bottle was now empty. Though it was less than a liter, the alcohol content was so high that both men were completely drunk. Mark was so unsteady on his feet that he had to call his wife, Sarah, to come and pick him up.
The next afternoon, Mark waited, but the call from Leo never came. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It was past 4. He figured his brother was sleeping off the whiskey. He pulled out his phone, about to call and tease him, when his screen lit up with an incoming call. The name on the screen was Leo. "Jeez, this guy's psychic," Mark muttered, a smile on his face as he answered. "Hello? I was just about to call you. You ready to go, or—" He stopped. The voice on the other end wasn't Leo's. It was Jenna's, thin and broken, ripped apart by sobs. "Mark? Mark, oh God, it's Leo. He's gone, Mark." "What?" The word was a dry croak. "Gone where? Jenna, what are you talking about? Don't joke like that." "I'm not joking," she shrieked. "He's dead, Mark. Leo's dead. I'm at the county hospital. Can you come?" "Stay right there," Mark managed to say, his voice numb. "I'm on my way."
Half an hour later, Mark and Sarah burst through the emergency room doors. It didn't take them long to find Jenna. She was slumped of a hard plastic chair outside a room marked morgue. Her eyes red and swollen, her body shaking uncontrollably. "Jenna," Mark breathed, his own heart pounding against his ribs. "What happened? What happened to him?"
"An accident," she choked out, the words barely audible. "He was in an accident on the county road. I think he was going to look at that property. The diner." Mark felt the world tilt on its axis. He took a hesitant step toward the morgue door. Inside, he could see the shapes of people moving around, some in police uniforms. A part of his brain, a desperate, childish part, clung to the hope that it was all a mistake, that the man in there wasn't his brother.
After another 30 minutes that felt like a lifetime, a doctor allowed them inside. The moment the sheet was pulled back, Mark knew there was no mistake. The person lying on the cold steel slab was his brother. A choked, guttural sob escaped his lips, a sound of pure animal grief. He collapsed against the gurney, weeping like a child, speaking to the still form, making promises he knew could never be heard.
The damage was horrific. Mark could only bear to look for a second. The back of Leo's head. It was just a ruin. His jaw was twisted at an unnatural angle. Even though the attendants had cleaned the body, fresh blood was still slowly seeping from the wounds, staining the white sheet a grim, dark crimson. The sight was so brutal, so wrong, that it defied all comprehension.
When they brought Leo's body home, the entire neighborhood seemed to descend upon the small house. The front yard was packed. Some were there to offer genuine condolences, their faces etched with sorrow. But many were there out of morbid curiosity, whispering and speculating in hushed tones.
Jenna, predictably, was a wreck. She fainted the moment the casket was brought inside. It fell to Mark, Sarah, and a few close relatives to handle the grim logistics of the funeral. The most heartbreaking sight was little Lily, who wandered through the crowd, innocently asking person after person where her daddy was. No one dared let her see the disfigured body of her father.
They had to do a closed casket service. The funeral director, a stern, solemn man named Mr. Abernathy,
who handled all the town's final arrangements, insisted it was for the best.
Later, Mark sat with Mr. Abernathy in the living room. The old man put on his reading glasses, consulted a tattered-looking book of dates and charts, and muttered to himself. Before Mark could even offer him a cup of coffee, Abernathy clicked his tongue. "This is difficult," he said, his voice a low rumble. "What do you mean, difficult?" Mark asked. "According to the dates you've given me, there isn't a single truly auspicious day for this funeral," the old man stated grimly. "The only proper day is more than 10 days from now. We can't wait that long." He sighed. "There are other complications. I will choose the least inauspicious day, but I am telling you now, as a professional courtesy, that this is not ideal."
Mark, whose mind was a fog of grief and exhaustion, just nodded numbly. "Do what you think is best. I trust you." That night, Mark vowed to stay awake with his brother. By 1 a.m., the house was quieter, though a few relatives, including a boorish cousin named Rick, were still drinking at a table in the corner. Mark stepped outside onto the porch to smoke, the cold air a welcome shock to his system.
"Hey, Mark," Rick's slurred voice called out. "Stop moping out there and come have a drink with us." Mark sighed and walked over. "You guys go ahead. I'm staying up." Rick sneered, his eyes glassy. "Oh, what, you're the only one allowed to grieve? Or do you just want to stay awake so you can be the first one to find where Leo hid all his cash? You're his brother. You probably know the combination to his safe, don't you?"
Something inside Mark snapped. In a flash, he crossed the room and grabbed the front of Rick's shirt, hoisting him halfway out of his chair. "You son of a bitch!" he snarled, his voice a low growl. "Say that again?" The other men at the table jumped up to separate them. "Easy, Mark. He's drunk. He's just talking shit. This is a funeral, for Christ's sake."
Mark released him, his chest heaving. He stalked back outside, shaking with rage. He paced the yard, trying to walk off the adrenaline. He found himself staring at the front gate, his eyes unfocused. And then he saw it, a figure, standing just inside the gate, shrouded in the darkness. "Who's there?" Mark called out, squinting. The figure stepped forward, and Mark's blood ran cold. The shape, the posture, it was unmistakable. "Leo?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Leo, is that you?" "Mark? Honey?" A hand shook his shoulder, and he jolted awake, gasping. He was still sitting on the porch steps, his head having slumped forward onto his chest. Sarah was standing over him, a blanket in her hands. "You fell asleep out here. You're going to catch your death." Mark blinked, his heart hammering. He looked wildly toward the gate. There was no one there. It was just an empty, dark space. It had all been a dream, but it had felt so real. The image was burned into his mind.
3 days later, they buried Leo. The sky wept a cold, miserable drizzle that soaked through everyone's coats. Jenna collapsed again as the first shovelful of dirt hit the casket, another wave of grief, or perhaps guilt, overwhelming her. After the funeral, his duty done, Mark went straight to the county sheriff's office. The officer on duty was polite but unhelpful. "We've identified some persons of interest, Mr. Bean," he said, his words rehearsed and hollow. "But the location of the accident, it's a blind spot. No witnesses, no security footage. We're doing our best, rest assured." Mark had heard those words before. He knew what they meant. The case was already cold. He drove to Leo's house afterwards. Jenna was a ghost in her own home, drifting from room to room. "You can't stay here alone, Jenna," Mark said gently.
Let Sarah come stay with you. No, I've been enough of a burden, she mumbled. I'll be fine. He left, promising his wife Sarah would come by the next day anyway. The moment Mark's truck disappeared down the road, another vehicle, a sleek sedan, pulled up to the curb. A man got out and walked to the door. It was Ethan, the man from New Year's Eve.
Are you insane? What are you doing here? Jenna hissed, pulling him inside. His name was Ethan. Before the money, before everything, Jenna had a secret. Ethan's wife was the owner of the online jewelry business Jenna worked for. Trapped in a loveless, financially strained marriage, Jenna had fallen into an affair with the charismatic, smooth-talking Ethan. The relationship ended abruptly when his wife discovered the infidelity, though not Jenna's identity. Now, fresh from a bitter divorce that had left him with nothing, Ethan had heard about the lottery win and had come to collect on what he felt he was owed. "I need money, Jenna," he said, his charm curdling into desperation. "A few tens of thousands. That's nothing to you now. A business opportunity." "Are you listening to yourself?" she whispered fiercely. "My husband is dead. This money—" I know, and I'm sorry for your loss," he said, placing a hand on her arm. "But you know I'll take care of you and Lily. Didn't I always protect you?" Jenna stood before her husband's funeral portrait, a lit stick of incense in her trembling hand. "I'm sorry, Leo," she murmured to the image. "It's over now, I promise. I'll raise our daughter right." As the words left her lips, she swore she saw the man in the photograph blink. A single, slow, deliberate blink. Stumbling back, she stared, her heart seizing. But the image was still. It had to be a trick of the light. It was just the beginning.
The next morning, the neighborhood dogs began to howl. They gathered at the front of Leo's house, a chorus of long, mournful cries directed at the silent building. It went on all day. When Sarah, Mark's wife, arrived, the dogs finally scattered. "My God, whose dogs are those?" Sarah exclaimed. "It's a wonder no one's been bitten." Inside, she found Jenna pale and shaking. The days that followed were a descent into a living nightmare for Jenna. One night, she dreamt of a hand reaching through the window to grab her. She awoke with a scream to find the window wide open, letting in the cold, rainy wind. The man in her dream had been Leo, his face a mask of blood and shattered bone, just as it had been in the morgue. He started appearing more and more frequently, a silent, vengeful sentinel in her waking nightmares. She stopped sleeping. She stopped eating. The beautiful woman who had blossomed with newfound wealth withered into a gaunt, terrified husk. Desperate, Sarah convinced Jenna to seek help. First, they went back to Mr. Abernathy, the funeral director, who also dabbled in spiritualism. As he began his rites for the seventh-day memorial, his hands began to shake violently. He collapsed to the floor, convulsing, muttering, "The spirit! So much anger!" Before passing out, he was the first casualty. Their next attempt was with a young, highly recommended clairvoyant from the city. In a room thick with incense, the young woman began her trance. But before she could make contact, one of her male assistants began to laugh. A deep, gurgling sound that wasn't his own. "You think you can command me?" The voice boomed from the assistant's lips. He lunged at the clairvoyant, throwing her against a table. Her head struck the hard edge, and she fell, bleeding and unconscious. Two people had now been harmed trying to appease Leo's spirit. Mark, meanwhile, was haunted in his own way. He had a dream where Leo stood before him, his face sorrowful. "He killed me, brother,"
The dream ghost whispered, "Help me!" When he was about to name the killer, Mark woke up. Troubled, he decided to visit Leo's grave. When he arrived, he stopped dead. Standing before his brother's tombstone, lighting incense, was the man he'd seen with Jenna, Ethan. A cold dread washed over Mark. This was no coincidence. Instead of approaching, Mark slipped away and followed Ethan from a distance. He followed him across the river to a small, isolated rental house. And what he saw there made his blood run cold. Parked in the driveway was Jenna's scooter. Mark hid, his mind racing. He watched as Jenna came out of the house, talking and smiling with Ethan before driving off. His gaze then fell upon something else in the yard, a large object covered by a tarp. Even beneath the cover, he could make out the distinct shape of a motorcycle. A new, powerful-looking one. A hit and run. A secret lover. A motorcycle. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity.
Jenna, meanwhile, had gotten a protective charm from Ethan, who claimed it was from a powerful relative. Miraculously, her nightmares stopped. But her relief was short-lived. A few days later, acting on an anonymous tip, the police raided Ethan's house. They found the motorcycle from the hit and run under the tarp. Ethan, alerted moments before, had already fled. The story was all over the news that night, and the next morning came the update. Ethan, while fleeing on a stolen bike, had lost control on a wet highway and slammed into an oncoming semi-truck. He was killed instantly. Leo's ghost had gotten its revenge.
The truth shattered Jenna completely. Whether Ethan had intentionally killed Leo or had done so by accident, she had been intimately involved with her husband's killer. The guilt was an ocean that drowned her. On the 100th day after Leo's death, she signed over the entire fortune and guardianship of Lily to Mark and Sarah. Then, she packed a single bag and left for a convent deep in the countryside, seeking a lifetime of penance behind monastery walls. Mark visited his brother's grave, which was now a beautifully constructed memorial. "It's over, Leo," he whispered, placing a hand on the cold stone. "She's gone. He's gone. You can rest now. Let us take care of Lily. Please, rest." As he spoke, a sudden gust of wind swirled through the cemetery, kicking up dust and leaves. For a fleeting second, he thought he saw a familiar shadowy shape nod at him from within the whirlwind before it dissipated into nothing, leaving only a profound silence. The small house was never lived in again. Mark brought his brother's memorial tablet to his own family's altar, but even now, on cold, windy nights, people in Havenwood say you can still hear the dogs howling, their cries directed at the empty house where a lottery ticket bought a fortune, a murder, and a haunting that would never truly end.